Okay, good afternoon, evening, everyone. Today is Friday, March 28th. I am happy to be back with you again, continuing, of course, our weekly tradition of reading Edgar Poe in the Bronx, of course. We have a live audience as usual, and we also have you at home, and I'm very happy to be joined by all of you. Um, First things first, I just wanted to acknowledge that last week's sort of special that Dennis and I had did was great. We appreciated your feedback, your comments, your questions. It was really engaging, and I hope that we can continue to do more of that in the future. I'm not going to do a super big thing in terms of what's going on politically. But I do just want to give a quick report. I was at the British consulate this morning. And I was at the British consulate this morning handing out a leaflet that said, don't let the British decapitate the Trump presidency, because there are assets there. The British intelligence and foreign intelligence agencies are currently trying to sabotage the Trump administration and our country as a whole. And so we were out there this morning with body signs that said exactly that, end the US UK special relationship. And I wish, man, I forgot to actually put those photos together, because I did take. Oh, wait, no, actually, I think I can if I just do this. I can put up this picture. And while I'm putting this up, we had some really good reactions from people who were both angry and happy with us, people who were walking into the consulate, people who probably worked there. And it was just a lot of fun, being out there with my friends and whatnot. And you know what? Here we go. I'm just going to put up a picture. We were there at like 8 a.m. or so. Here we go, just for people to see. And I'll probably make this a full screen thing here. And so that was this morning. We were out there. We had some really good reactions. People who were both happy and angry at us. And you don't actually realize this until you go into the streets and you, as some people say, touch grass. In our case, touch some pavement. You realize that people are actually more aware of what's going on than you would like to think, and that this idea of the special relationship is actually something that does exist in people's minds, to the point that they get angry. I had one reaction where one person said, the British helped us after 9/11. How could we ever sever our special relationship? And then I had some people come up to me who were like, no, absolutely. And we were able to make contacts because of what we did, just sort of being out there. So, we did this on a moment's notice. I know people have gripes with the cabinet. And believe me, I do too. But at the same time, the strife that is being created there with this whole Signalgate fiasco and everything else that is going on in the cabinet that look like self-sabotage, but really are foreign-induced kinds of acts to disrupt and destroy the cabinet, to create confusion, not just in the administration, but in the American public as well, must be highlighted and must be understood from that standpoint. There is a foreign influencing operation happening, and people need to act on that basis as if that were something that should be everywhere and should be discussed everywhere. So I'm not going to take any more time on briefing people. We can continue the discussion afterwards. I know there's a whole bunch of stuff like Netanyahu pushing for war with Iran. And I would like to get into that at some point if there's time. But first, I want to bring in Dennis Speed. Dennis, hi.
Hello there. How are you?
I'm well.
I say hello to everybody. Well, to understand why we talk about this idea of British intelligence and British imperial thinking, it's always useful to just situate oneself. Why do we think that it is 6 o'clock? Where does that come from?
Sorry, why do we think it's 6 o'clock?
Yeah. Why do people think it's 6 o'clock here? And why do they think it is 2 a.m. in London, or rather in Germany. Actually, it's 6 hours ahead, 5 hours ahead now, 1 a.m. You know that's this. The reason that you think that is because of what someone did in 1876. That person was British.
What do you mean? What
Well,
happened in
how,
1876?
why is it the time it is said to be? Where does that come from?
From like ancient times, as far as recorded history goes.
The first system of time zones was proposed by Sir Sandford Fleming in 1876, according to an article in Globe and Mail, a Canadian news publication. Fleming was a Scottish engineer who helped design the Canadian railway system. He wanted to make the railroad more efficient and avoid any complications resulting from the different schedules set by the different train stations, which set the time according to their local astronomical conditions. Accordingly, he proposed a system of 24 standard time zones that would span the circumference of the Earth. Within each time zone, all clocks would be set to an average time that best represented where the sun was located in the sky. The practicality of his system soon caught on, so that by 1900, most of the industrialized nations of the world had adopted it.
So that was 1876.
Well, 1900, everybody adopted it, but it's sort of like, why do we think that it's March 28th or 29th, whatever it is? Why is that?
Well, okay, well, because it was studied the way back when they made the Gregorian calendar. They knew they had to standardize our date system. We needed to have 12 months in a year that would coincide with, our orbit around the sun, or I guess at that time, which was the sun's orbit around the Earth, so that when it made one full rotation, 365 days and change, that the calendar could reflect that.
Okay, let me ask you a question. What does the word September mean?
Well, okay, 7th,
Okay, October,
8th,
November,
9th,
December.
10th.
Okay, so are they the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th months of the year?
Well, they are not. They're not.
Okay, so thereby hangs the story of what is happening to Donald Trump's administration. Now, you could have a better appreciation of the confusion in that administration tonight. And we're not going to stop and talk about that, except that I just want people to understand how this works. Because the story we're about to read is going to pose an interesting problem, and we will have time for this to be read. And at that point, I may have to absent myself, but I think that there will be a discussion that you'll all want to have. We'll need 6 readers, and I'd like you to be the first character here, Jose, and I will be the narrator.
Okay.
The story by Edgar Poe is called A Succession of Sundays, or 3 Sundays in a Week.
Okay, just before we begin, by the way, I do want to highlight there was a comment here. So somebody was responding to, I didn't see it in time. They said time zones are so that the sun would appear at the same place at noon. So, somebody had it and I just didn't see that.
Right, but they are not natural. That's my point.
Okay.
Like, for example, there's an international date line.
Yeah.
And we don't mean, a hookup line. Okay. And the international date line, where is it? It's in the middle of the Pacific. But is there a line that's actually in the middle of the Pacific? No. If you go to that part of the Pacific between Hawaii and Wake Island, You will not find a place in the ocean where there is a line and all the water's not there and it's hollowed out and there's a line there. These things are all inventions of the mind. They are subjective. They take on the character of objective reality because there is an agreement among people to make them appear to define reality when in fact they are ideas. So this is an important conception to have, because that conception, if that is really thought about and it's really mastered, is the key to solving the problem that the presently astounded Trump administration doesn't see, which they imported into the administration from the beginning. They had it sitting there the whole time. Some people refer to it as the Zionist lobby. That's not actually what it is, though. But it's a footprint that would then get you to see something, can get you to see something that's behind that. But let's start with the story, and we'll see why this story is of use in thinking about the matters that we've just introduced.
All right.
So,
Will you also signal us when you want us to change?
well, you'll know it because of the characters. There's different characters in this one, so we'll need. I don't know if how would we do this? You want to have people get up? Can they be heard where they are or not? Really?
Well, they'll have to line up. They know what I'm talking about. They'll have to line up over here.
Okay, so here's what we can do. The first, we're going to need somebody to be a second character right away. So we need a second reader immediately, besides, well, three. So we need somebody. Somebody's got to be the uncle.
All right. Well, we're having some new folk come up here. All right. So you sit up there. Nathan, do you want to be one of the readers?
Sure.
Okay. Here, can you take my backpack down? You just put it over there. Yeah. All right, this is great. All right. So
Okay.
I will move the microphone over here so that you can be heard. And Dennis, if you have problems hearing people, let me know.
Right, because that would mean other people would have problems.
Yeah,
I will
exactly.
need somebody to be to relieve me as narrator also. Let's get another person for that right now, just who knows they're going to do that. It won't be for a couple of pages, but I just want to line you up.
Daniel,
Okay, ready?
you want to be relieve Dennis' speed of narrator in a couple pages?
Gladly.
All right. So we have a quorum of readers
Okay,
so
great.
far.
So we're ready. Let's go.
All right. So I begin. So you'll be the narrator, and I'm just reading the character lines, right?
That's right.
You hard okay. A succession of Sundays, written for the Sunday Evening Post. Oh, that's funny. By Edgar A. Poe. You hard-hearted, dunder-headed, obstinate, rusty, crusty, musty, fusty old savage,
Said I, in fancy, one afternoon, to my grand uncle Rumgudgeon, shaking my fist at him in imagination, only in imagination. The fact is that some trivial discrepancy did exist between what I said just then, and what I had not the courage to say, between what I did and what I had half a mind to do. The old porpoise, as I opened the dining room door, was sitting with his feet up on the mantelpiece and a bumper of port in his paw, making strenuous efforts to accomplish the ditty Remplis ton vere vide, vide ton vere pline, or refill thy empty glass, empty the full one.
my dear uncle.
Said I, closing the door gently and approaching him with the blandest of smiles.
You are always so very kind and considerate, and have evinced your benevolence in so very many ways that I feel I have only to suggest this little point to you once more to procure your full acquiescence.
Said he.
Good boy. Go on.
I am sure, my dearest uncle, You confounded old rascal, that you have no design really, seriously, to oppose my union with Kate. This is merely a joke of yours. I know. How very pleasant you are at times.
said he.
Curse you, yes.
Of course, I knew you were jesting. Now, uncle, all that Kate and myself wish at present is that you would oblige us with your advice. You are so very competent to advise us, uncle, and as regard the time, you know, uncle, in short, when will it be most convenient for yourself that the wedding shall come off, you know?
Come off, you scoundrel. What do you mean by that? Better wait till it goes on.
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's capital. Such a wit. But all we wish, just now, you know, uncle, is that you would indicate the time precisely.
Ah, precisely.
Yes, uncle, that is, if it would be quite agreeable to yourself.
Wouldn't it answer, Bobby, if I were to leave it at a random? Sometime within a year or so, for example. Must I say precisely?
If you please, uncle, precisely.
Well then, Bobby, my boy, you're a fine fellow, aren't you? Since you will have the exact time, I'll oblige you for once.
Dear uncle.
Sir, I'll oblige you for once. You shall have my consent. And the plum, Bobby. We mustn't forget the plum. Let me see. Now then, when shall it be? Today's Sunday, isn't it? Well then, I have it. You shall be married precisely, now mind, when 3 Sundays come in succession. Do you hear me, sir? What are you gaping at? I say you shall have Kate and the plum when 3 Sundays come in succession, but not till then, you young scapegrace. Not till then if I die for it. You know me. I'm a man of my word. Now be off.
Here he swallowed his tumbler of port while I rushed from the room in despair. A very fine old English gentleman was my grand Uncle Rumgudgeon, but unlike him of the song, he had his weak points. He was a little pursy, pompous, passionate, semicircular somebody with a red nose, a thick skull, a long purse, and a strong sense of his own consequence. With the best heart in the world, he contrived to earn for himself, among those who only knew him superficially, the character of a curmudgeon, merely through a predominant whim of contradiction. Like many excellent people, he seemed possessed by a spirit of tantalization, which might easily, at a casual glance, have been mistaken for malevolence. To every request, a positive no was his answer. But in the end, in the long, long end, there were exceedingly few requests which he refused. Against all attacks upon his purse, he made the most sturdy defense. But the amount extorted from him at last was always in exact ratio with the length of the siege and the stubbornness of the resistance. In charity, no one gave more liberally or with worse grace. For the fine arts, and especially for the belles lettres, he entertained a profound contempt. With this, he had been inspired by Casimir Perier, whose pert little query, and I'll just read it in English, what is a poet good for? He was in the habit of quoting with very droll pronunciation as the ne plus ultra of logical wit. Thus my own inkling for the muses excited his entire displeasure. He assured me once, when I had asked him for a new copy of Horace, that the meaning of poeta nascitur non fit, the poet is born, not made, was actually a nasty poet for nothing fit. an insult which I took in very serious dudgeon. His repugnance to the humanities had also been much increased by late by an accidental bias in favor of what he supposed to be natural science. Somebody had accosted him in the street, mistaking him for no less a personage than Dr. Double LD, the lecturer upon quack physics. This set him off at a tangent, and just at the epoch of this story it is growing to be after all, my granduncle Rumgudgeon was accessible and pacific only upon points which happened to chime in with the caprioles of the hobby he was riding. For the rest, he laughed with his arms and legs, and his politics were stubborn and easily understood. He thought with hoarsely that the people had nothing to do with the laws but to obey them. I had lived with the old gentleman all my life. My parents had bequeathed me to him as a rich legacy in dying. I believe the old villain loved me as his own child, nearly if not quite as well as he loved Kate. But it was a dog's existence that he led me after all. From my first year until my fifth, he obliged me with very regular floggings. From 5 to 15, he threatened me hourly with a house of correction. From 15 to 20, not a day passed in which he did not swear a round oath that he would cut me off with a shilling. I was a sad dog, it's true. But then it was a part of my nature, a point of my faith. In Kate, I had, however, a firm friend, and I knew it. She was a good girl, and told me very sweetly that I might have her, plum and all, whenever I would badger my grand uncle Rumgudgeon into the necessary consent. Poor girl, she was barely 15, and without this consent, her little amount in the funds would not be compatible until 5 immeasurable summers had dragged their slow lengths along. What then to do? At 15, or even at 20, for I had now reached my 5th lustrum, 5 years in prospect are very much the same as 500. In vain we besieged the old gentleman with importunities. Here was a pièce de résistance, as Messieurs Ude and Carême would say, which suited his perverse fancy to a T. It would have stirred the indignation of Job himself to see how much like an old Mauser he behaved to us, 2 poor wretched little mice. In his heart he wished for nothing more ardently than our union. He had made up his mind to this all along. In fact, he would have given 10,000 pounds from his own pocket. Kate's plum was her own. If he could have discovered or invented anything like a decent excuse for complying with our very natural wishes. But then we had been so imprudent as to broach the subject ourselves. Not to oppose it under such circumstances, I sincerely believe, was not in the power of my dear, good, obstinate, tantalistical old Uncle Rumgudgeon. Okay, can somebody else read the narrator?
I have said already that he had his weak points, but in speaking of these, I must not be understood as referring to his obstinacy. That was one of his strong points. Assurement central balsafwaba.
Assuredly, it was not among his foibles.
When I mentioned his weakness, I had allusion to a kind of bizarre, old womanish superstition which beset him. He was great in dreams, portents, et id genus omne of rigmarole. He was excessively punctilious, too, upon small points of honor, although sufficiently loose in regard to large ones. He was a man of his word, beyond doubt, but it was after his own fashion to keep the word of promise to the ear, but break it to the hope, was in fact one of his hobbies. The spirit of his vows he made no scruple of setting at naught, but the letter of his word was a bond inviolable. Now it was this latter peculiarity in his disposition of which Kate's ingenuity enabled us, one fine day, not long after our interview in the dining room, to take a very unexpected advantage. And, Having thus, in the fashion of all modern bards and orators, exhausted in prolegomend all the time at my command, and nearly every inch of the space assigned me, I will sum up what constitutes the pith of the story in as concise a style as that of Tacitus or Montesquieu. It happened then, so the fates ordered it, that among the naval acquaintances of my betrothed, there were two gentlemen who had just set foot on the shores of England after a year's absence, each in foreign travel. In company with these gentlemen, my cousin and I, preconcertedly, paid old Uncle Rumgudgeon a visit on the afternoon of Sunday, October the 10th, just 3 weeks after the memorable decision which had so cruelly defeated our hopes. For about half an hour, the conversation ran upon ordinary topics, but at last we contrived quite naturally to give it the following turn.
Oh, I see. Oh, these are lines in a play. Okay,
Right.
so you keep being
Uncle.
Uncle, and then do you want to be Captain Pratt?
Yeah.
And then you'll be Captain Smitherton. Okay, all right. I need everybody, even though you're kind of close to the mic, speak out loud. And then Lynn will be Kate. So, go ahead.
And so, Captain Pratt, you have been absent from London a whole year today, as I live. Let me see. Yes, this is October the 10th.
A whole year to today, sir. Precisely. You remember I called to bid you a goodbye. And by the way, Mr. Rumgudgeon, it does seem something like a coincidence, does it not, that our friend Captain Smitherton here has been absent exactly a year also, a year today.
Yes, just 1 year to a fraction. You will remember, Mr. Rumgudgeon, that I called with Captain Pratt on this very day last year to pay you my parting respects.
Yes. I remember it well. Very queer indeed. Both of you gone just 1 year. A very strange coincidence indeed. Just what Dr. Double LD...
To be sure, Papa, it is something strange. But then Captain Pratt and Captain Smitherton didn't go altogether the same route, and that makes a difference, you know.
I don't know any such thing, you hussy. How should I? I think it only makes the matter more remarkable. Dr. Double LD.
Why, Papa, Captain Pratt went around Cape Horn, and Captain Smitherton doubled the Cape of Good Hope.
Precisely. The one went east and the other west. You jade, and they both have gone quite round the world. By the by, Dr. Double LD.
Captain Pratt, you must come and spend the evening with us tomorrow. You and Captain Smitherton. You can tell us about your voyage, and we'll have a game of whist and...
Whist? My dear fellow, you forgot yourself. Tomorrow will be Sunday, some other evening.
Oh, no, fine. Bobby's not quite so bad as that. Today is Sunday.
To be sure.
I beg both your pardons, but I can't be so much mistaken. I know tomorrow's Sunday because...
What are you all talking about? Wasn't yesterday Sunday? I should like to know.
Yesterday indeed.
You're out.
Today's Sunday, I say. Don't I know?
Oh no, tomorrow's Sunday.
You are all mad, every one of you. I am as positive that yesterday was Sunday as I am that I sit upon this chair.
I see it all. Papa, this is a judgment upon you about you know what? Let me alone and I'll explain it all in a minute. It's a very simple thing. Indeed, Captain Smitherton says that yesterday was Sunday, and so it was. He is right. Cousin Bobby and Uncle and I say today is Sunday, so it is, and we are right. Captain Pratt maintains that tomorrow will be Sunday, so it will, and he is right too. The fact is, we are all right. And thus, 3 Sundays have come together.
Oh, yes, by the by, Pratt. Kate is quite rational. What fools we two are. Mr. Rumgudgeon, the matter stands thus. The earth, you know, is 24,000 miles in circumference.
To be sure, Dr. Double.
24,000 miles in circumference. Now this globe of the earth turns upon its own axis, revolves, spins around these 24,000 miles of extent, going from west to east in precisely 24 hours. Do you understand, Mr. Rumgudgeon?
To be sure, Dr. Dub.
Well, sir, that is at the rate of 1,000 miles per hour. Now I sail from this position 1,000 miles east. I anticipate the rising of the sun here at London by just 1 hour. Proceeding in the same direction, yet another 1,000 miles, I anticipate the rising by 2 hours. Another 1,000, and I anticipate it by 3 hours. And so on until I go entirely around the globe and back to this spot, when, having gone 24,000 miles east, I anticipate the rising of the London sun by no less than 24 hours. That is to say, I am a day in advance of your time. Captain Pratt, on the contrary, when he had sailed 1,000 miles west of this position, was an hour, and when he had sailed 24,000 miles west, was 24 hours, or a day behind the time at London. Thus, with me yesterday was Sunday, thus with you today is Sunday, and thus with Pratt tomorrow will be Sunday. And what is more, Mr. Rumgudgeon, it is positively clear that we are all right, for there can be no philosophical or just reason assigned why the idea of one should have preference over that of the other.
My eyes! Well, Kate. Well, Bobby. This is a judgment upon me, as you say. I always was a great old scoundrel, but I am a man of my word, mark that. You shall have her, my boy, plum and all, when you please. Done up by Jove! 3 Sundays all in a row. I'll go and take double LD's opinion on that.
All right.
So,
So what do you think?
any thoughts, anyone?
Who is Dr. Double LD?
Adrian from the back of the room just asked, "Who is Dr. Double LD?" Well,
That's like Dr. Gundry, or it's like one of these guys, Guru. It's just a guru name.
or I was thinking of like when in the Meno or in any of the other Platonic dialogues, when they're like, "But Gorgias says this."
Yeah.
Gorgias says that. And Socrates is like, "Okay, well, here's what I think, Or say, well, tell me what Gorgias says, something like that. Somebody in the comments said consent at 15, plums and all.
That's the money, man. That's the money.
Man.
Dowries.
Well, the plum's the dowry.
The plums, the dowry. That's what kind of said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how old is the young man?
I don't know.
21,
He's 20. He's 20. About going on 21.
Okay.
It was also it's the term should have been fifth Olympiad was one of the other terms that's used for that. It says he had completed his 5th Olympiad. 4 years.
Okay.
The protagonist of the story is a poet, right?
Kynan is asking if the protagonist of the story is a poet, right?
Apparently.
What are they good for? Well, okay, I think I have to kind of I want to just kind of get this out the way, but like, are there autobiographical elements of this?
Well, Poe likes to have fun. I mean, he knew people, and he obviously changed things. But there is one element of this is that this to know. Well, does anybody here? Well, ask yourself this question. Suppose you had a magnetically levitated train or an underground vacuum train. And suppose the underground vacuum train went around the world. Let's say it went underwater. And that train, we already know the plan is for those trains to go 1,200 miles an hour. So if the Earth moves at 1,000 miles an hour, and you were going in the direction in which the Earth was rotating, it rotates west to east, counterclockwise. And you were going, therefore, toward the sun in that sense, I mean, rising. Would you ever see night?
Well, I guess not. You would be ahead. Well, I mean, if you're going at 1,200,
Don't say 1,000. You want to go just above, because otherwise you'll catch up. You bet to the wet wood. But if you were able to keep a consistent pace, let's say just ahead of the rotation of the Earth, would you ever see darkness?
No.
yeah. No. What'd you say, Adrian?
You're underground.
Well, if you're underground,
Yes, if you're in an underground tunnel, you can see darkness.
Well, I mean, because like, if you're going 1,200 miles, you are slightly faster than the.
Well, I thought Dennis changed it, so it's just you're going basically the exact same speed
Oh,
as the revolution.
Oh, okay. So then,
you're-
well, if that's the case, then no, you'll always be like locked with the sun,
Right. So it would always be daytime.
right? So you wouldn't age, and you would live forever.
Well, that may not be, but I'm saying something. It's sort of important, right? Because the question is this story right? There's has anybody ever heard of Around the World in 80 Days?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
That's where this comes from.
Mm.
That's where the Around the World in 80 Days comes from. There's let me just see if I can find the reference to that. Jules Verne wrote an article about this. Actually, he read this story. Verne read it, I think, sometime in the 1860s. Poe died in 1849. But Poe's writings were very popular, particularly in France. So that's part of the plot line.
Would they be completely translated, or were they reading it in English?
No, they were translated. And there are several people that did those translations, Baudelaire being the most famous. And this is actually in the 1850s. Poe was also already pretty well known. Some people knew him in English, but he became very popular there. And I just point this out because this idea of the paradox of time, because in other words, that's right? If you're at the international date line, right? If you if you take a look at your watch right now, what time is it in Beijing?
It is 6:42 a.m.,
which means it's Saturday.
Exactly 12 hours ahead.
So it's Saturday.
It is Saturday in Beijing.
Right. Now how? So we know that, right? So it's ahead. So if you were traveling east from Beijing and it's now 6 o'clock in the morning and you travel east and you're coming, let's say, to California, San Francisco, something like that. What happens when you reach there? Do you gain a day or do you lose a day?
You gain. Nathan is saying you gain.
Okay, people agree.
Does everyone agree? You gain a day. Yeah, I guess, right? Because then
Yeah.
you would go
They're-
back.
They're 9 hours ahead. Yeah.
Right.
12 hours ahead.
Yeah. So it would be Friday. If you, yeah, right. If it's Saturday in Beijing and you made it to California, assuming no travel time.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. You have to account for the time traveled. And then
Right.
whatever the time traveled is, the difference between the time traveled and the difference
Of time.
of relative time of the two times, the difference between that and how long it takes you to travel is how much you gain or lose.
Yeah.
Right.
But if it took the exact same amount, then you would get there instantly, even though you had been traveling 9 hours.
I think
Oh,
that, I think
Or
that
you would get there at the same time, put it differently, not instantly. It would appear on your clock, your watch, that it was instant. I think it's 9 hours between Beijing and California.
But also, if you're traveling faster than the rotation, you're still not
not
gaining
doing
more
it.
experiential time from your own perspective. Like you'll still experience the same amount of hours you would. You would just be gaining time against the clock of the globe.
Yeah.
But you just have to experience those hours.
Well, yeah, but sure.
but I
Yeah.
think the way that they describe it in the story, is it based on the assumption that they're traveling instantaneously? Or is,
Well, one is going in one direction, one's going in the other, and the third is not going at all.
Yeah, one's losing an hour each day.
Where somebody commented it is 0042 for me right now because they're trying to see like where they are. So I guess that means they're was that 1 a.m. or so or no, that's 12:42 a.m. right?
Yeah, that's
So this person's somewhere in Europe.
Where are they? New Zealand? Oh no,
Wherever
no, that's someplace. That might be Moscow
oh
or Tel Aviv.
oh that would make sense. And their name being Cyrillic would be Spiros.
Right. Right now it's 1:45 a.m. in Istanbul.
Bulgaria. You just said he's in
Istanbul.
Bulgaria.
Okay.
Bulgaria?
Yeah.
Right. And he said it's 0.42.
Yes.
Why is it 0?
Well, the day's just starting. It's midnight for him.
He's saying kind of in the back said it's midnight. The day is just starting for him.
Right. So 42, 40, or actually now it's 46 minutes. So say 46 minutes ago.
It
It
became
was-
Saturday. Oh yeah. So right. So he's a day ahead of us.
Right. Yeah. He's a day ahead.
My kids have 2 birthdays
Daniel said his kids have 2 birthdays
because they were born in Japan.
because they were born in Japan.
And June, for example, was born a little bit after midnight
His son was born after midnight
on the 20th,
on the 20th,
which means that his birthday in the United States is the 19th.
which
We're gonna get 2 birthday parties.
wow. Oh wait, no, that's right. Because when we went to China a couple of years ago,
Tell you.
no. When we went to China a couple of years ago, it overlapped with my birthday. So we left on the 16th in America, but we got there and it was the 17th. So it was my birthday there. And then as we slept, it was my birthday here. So I got 2 birthdays,
Wow.
you know?
Well,
Great.
We'll do that every year.
Got to do that every year.
so it's interesting, right? Because we say that the hour is 0.
Yeah.
You don't say, I mean, we know we call it midnight, right? Well, what is that? What does midnight mean?
Well, it's what when
In
the
the middle of the night.
well the middle of the night, yeah,
Right.
but like yeah, okay. Yeah.
Between, 6 p.m. and 6 a.m.
It's between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Right. It's a midpoint.
It's a misnomer.
Mid-
Misnomer.
Misnomer.
Well, it's interesting, right? Because in other words, the hour is designated as a 0 hour. I mean, for obvious reasons. You have a 24-hour system. I'm not saying that, but it's important just to kind of get this idea of why they're saying there's actually 3 Sundays in a week. because in fact, the point is that the time itself, it was somebody said the thing about the experience of time is identical. Well, that's interesting because the internal time consciousness can shift. But here you have a system, and he's just talking about this in a certain way. In the story Around the World in 80 Days, do people know what it is? It's a contest. That's the idea. One person goes east, the other person goes west. And the issue is, can they get back? Who will win in 80 days? How long does it take you to circumnavigate the globe is the point. And then who can do it faster? That's what the story is about. So it just takes the this story from Edgar Poe and takes it up. I don't think I want to say much more about this. I just think it's pretty straightforward. But I also think that this issue of looking at time and the time zones, and then how time is constructed by people deciding that there are, like in this case, it was this of the international date line and so on. Question of establishing continuity globally. That's interesting. But is that really? There's not objective time in the way in which people have thought about it.
Well,
I have a comment. I guess he intended to put this in the chat, but it didn't work. This is from Hal. He says, high speed.
Wait, can you come up and just read it? Sorry for the siren.
This is a comment that was sent to me. I guess it couldn't get in the chat. It says a high-speed train could catch the sun easier in Canada than in Brazil.
Well, what does that mean? What?
Latitude.
Oh, because wait, what? Because of the latitude?
Yeah.
If you're going according to the latitude,
Mm.
you have a smaller circle.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Because with the globe. But here's a curveball. How do they do time in the ISS? In the International Space Station? You know?
No, how?
Oh, I'm asking. I'm asking.
Zulu.
What?
The Zulu time.
They just do Zulu time?
What is
Like-
Zulu?
It's like the international standard. It's like you see a time stamp with like a Z at the end.
I think so. Let me look it up. How does the days function on the ISS? Oh, here we go. On the ISS, a day is defined by the 16 orbits the station makes around Earth within a 24-hour period, resulting in 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets for the astronauts. The ISS orbits Earth approximately every 90 minutes, meaning it completes roughly 16 orbits in a 24-hour period. As the ISS orbits, it passes through periods of sunlight and darkness, resulting in 16 sunrises and 16 sunsets for the astronauts each day. Wow. Oh, but the ISS observes Greenwich Mean Time, UTC.
The ISS is British.
The ISS is British. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Greenwich Mean Time
Is
Prime meridian.
what is prime meridian?
That's the 0 longitudinal point.
And it goes through London.
Ew. Okay.
Yeah, Jules Verne wrote an article called "The Meridian and the Calendar" in 1873. And he refers in his article to a writer, Ismail Ibn Fida, lived from 1273 to 1331. And he established this, he examined the idea of traveling eastward and westward, and the third person staying at the same point of origin. So Verne looked at and commented about Poe's story, because this is what Poe does in his story. And the Around the World in 80 days was published in 1873. And I don't want to give you all the whole plot line, but that's what the issue of the difference in the time figures in the plot of the story. So this is an important idea because the issue of clock time, remember, we had that with Wonder what time it is, the devil in the belfry. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was the problem, is that what happens if the clock strikes 13? Then, well, all the people in the town say, hey, I should have eaten already. The cooks say, hey, my food is all burned, etc. But actually, nothing different should have occurred. Here we have something which is the other way around, which is that because of the way that these people navigated the globe, one person and one group of people have lost time, one have gained time, and for the other, there's been what? Has there been a change? Is there a change for the people who are not taking either trip?
No.
Kind of said no in the back.
Why?
Well, they're completely stationary. I mean,
But are they?
oh, well, no, I guess because the Earth is also moving, right?
Right. So I just would point out, I mean, the reason I said what I said at the beginning concerning the Trump administration and so on, in other words, there are other considerations that we have to look at because the Earth itself is rotating. So no one is fixed, but you assign values which you use as reference points, like the meridian lines, for example. So there's what it said, you're averaging out astronomical observations, and then you're establishing this as the system is divided into 24. That's, of course, it's itself an interesting question. Why is it 24? How come it's not 30 or 60? I'm saying these are things that should be investigated a bit, and I actually think people should think about it next week. What I think so people, I just make sure people know this. We had begun one story we have not gotten back to, which is the Hans Fall story. We do want to go back there. I guess what we'd have to decide is, do we want to try to read the whole thing in one sitting, which means it'd have to be a special session. And we should probably just kick that around and let people know. It would take longer. I think we would have to start at a different time, probably. Or we'd have to go longer. Therefore, we'd have to let people know because there were other events that happened. Just to say that.
I think the idea of starting an hour earlier might be
for one session. It wouldn't be,
it would be a special one-off. Might want to bring in some special guest readers. Come in.
Well, if we're going to do that, you have to determine whether you want to do it next week. It's probably a good idea to get back to it since it's the only one we have ever done, which we didn't finish.
Yeah.
It's because of the length. And the reason also is because of what we're dealing with in this story as well. So if we think that's what we're going to do, let's let people know right away. And we can see if that works for people's schedule. If it's too much of a strain for people, we'll just have to figure something else out.
Okay. All right. Well,
All right.
This is probably a natural place to conclude because you have to be on Diane's program.
Yeah, right now. Yes.
Oh yeah. So for anybody watching, we got 3 minutes till we have to change to that. You can watch that on the LaRouche Organization YouTube channel and also Rumble channel. Dennis Speed will be a guest on that as well. I want to thank everybody for coming. Did he just hop off? I was trying to give him a proper conclusion. All right. Well, anyway, with that being said, I want to thank you all for coming in this week, and we will see you again next week for our special session. Hopefully it's next week. You'll know. So here we go.